So the basic idea is that in many cultures, with rare exception, you could probably think of a few, homosexuality, sodomy were condemned. And the question is why? Like, why would that be societally, evolutionarily conditioned? And his answer, which is just a hypothesis, is that it's kind of, well, one, it doesn't make babies. And it's too good of a deal. Like if people, men and women, can get sexual pleasure without producing children, and they tend towards that, that society will have fewer children and, will be weaker in the event of a war or production or whatever. And so it was just interesting for me to think, oh my gosh, in what would happen in a world of abundance? And it seems to indicate, if this hypothesis is right, is that you'd see a lot more bisexuality and homosexuality. You'd see a lot more people opting out of children because that would be less necessary going forward for the protection of that society.
This is just anecdotal because I don't have a TikTok, but my girlfriend uses TikTok and she happened to be looking at one and I was like, oh, that's funny. Like, she's talking about her boyfriend. She goes, no, she's talking about her girlfriend. And I said, oh, that's interesting. So she's like a famous bisexual TikToker. And my girlfriend's understanding is there's a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And basically that bisexuality is much more widely accepted in people, I don't know, 13 to 22 today than it was
when we were growing up
50 years ago or 30 years ago or whatever it was. So we might actually have that. We might have a lot more people who are young adults who identify as bisexual now than we did in the past.
Yeah.
That's literally just an anecdotal observation from TikTok. Maybe it's not true, but that's my understanding.
Well, and I think trans is a similar idea, which is, look back in the day, like what you felt like on the inside, it was subservient to survival needs. Like, it's like you might feel a certain way, but guess what? We don't have enough luxury for you to feel your feelings. You're going out this way. You're going over here. And that's just how it breaks. And we're all going to die anyway when the next tribe invades us. So like, we'll deal with what you feel like later. And now, so that there's a relative level of abundance and these gender roles are not as necessary for survival, you start to see this resurgence of, or I guess not resurgence, surge of people coming out as trans. And it's interesting. And I think you're going to see a breakdown of, I hope you see a breakdown of these traditional gender roles, perhaps not too quickly so that we don't lose the things that we still need, but it does seem like we don't need every aspect of gender as we used to.
You do raise an interesting point that I have literally never thought of, which is you don't need a commandment to not cut your own penis off or stab yourself in the eyes, like things that would make you less useful to society, like being blinded or generally incapable of having children. There's no commandment that says, hey, don't cut your penis off and stab your eyes out.
There's a commandment against suicide.
So,
which is interesting because that's tempting for some.
Well, this is what I'm saying is I guess if you assume that it's written by man.
The collective intelligence of societies got together to say, you can't do gay stuff.
Which meant there was a tendency towards it or an urge for it that they felt they had to curb. So basically, not only was this happening, but this was happening and they felt it was happening too much for the betterment of society.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's just one correction. It's not that they felt, it's that the collective wisdom of societal evolution, I imagine that there were some groups where it was like, he talks about a little bit, it's just one example about Tahiti, which is an island, without natural predators and invaders. And it's just like way more free sex, way more do what you want. But yeah, when you put a bunch of competing tribes against one another, the ones that apparently outlaw homosexuality do better, it seems. Or at least those have been the ones that have dominated throughout history, perhaps by accident. But I think he raises a good point that not just by accident. And they also, interestingly, did have some role potentially for homosexual men, and I haven't gone deep into this, in the role of priests. And so there was some space made for like learned scholars who would not participate in the reproduction of the species, but of some sort of ecclesiastical or like job that they would take.
Well, I used to think that gay and straight was binary.
People are going to be mad that I said that historically a lot of gay people were priests. I think, but I don't know that that's necessarily the case. I have heard that hypothesis.
I don't know. I'm not going to touch that. What I say, I used to think gay and straight were binary, and I thought because gay people say that they were born this way, I just assume it's nature, not nurture, and it's binary. And that's just how it breaks out. And it breaks out to be that 10% of the population is born homosexual and 90% are born heterosexual. Until I learned about the Greek and Roman soldiers, who were all having sex with each other. And that was very confusing to me because I went, wait, why is this population genetically being born nature-wise with such a larger degree of homosexual tendencies? And that kind of broke my mental model. And that was the part where I switched to saying it's more of a spectrum, which is to say, I think you fall somewhere from absolutely heterosexual and there's nothing society could do to get you interested in same-sex sex. Mm-hmm. Absolutely homosexual, there's nothing society could do to make you interested in the opposite sex. And then people who are in the middle, which goes, if they tell you this is bad, you just won't do it. And you literally won't feel the attraction. You won't have to fight any urges. But if they tell you it's even better than heterosexual sex, all of a sudden you're happily participating. And that was the only way. I don't know if that's the consensus mental model, but that was the only way I could kind of figure out how it would be possible that depending on the society, you would just have a massive amount of the male population that was totally cool with same-sex sex. Because that doesn't hold up if you just assume only 10% of the population leans towards this and that it's all nature. Yeah. But because of my gay friends saying it's very strongly nature and that they felt like this since even before puberty, I was like, okay, there must be something genetic as well as a societal thing. So that's where I came up with you have a spectrum and then society falls somewhere on the spectrum and then everybody to the left is cool with same sex. And so that's my current mental model.
Sure. I mean, that's Kinsey. That's I think he would grade people like 1 to 14 or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I think it's reasonable to assume that if there were gay people, even in ages where it would result in your death, that there's very little choice and it's undeniable at that level. Like if you're going to sneak off and risk death in order to do this, and it's reasonable to say that on the other side, there is at least as big of a heterosexual component, if not much larger, because that's what tends towards the propagation of the species.
That was my thinking. I was like, okay, actually what's funny enough is even in the Spartans, there must have been someone who didn't do it just because there were people willing to risk their life to not have opposite sex.
I don't know a ton about the Spartans, but I do believe it was a certain segment of the warriors, and in the Greeks, it was a relationship between a mentor and a mentee. Mm-hmm. Like it was curbed to particular relationships is how it was socially expressed and accepted.
Sure, but in the same way that even when a closeted gay man is having sex with his wife, he's not enjoying it. There was someone in the Spartan army that was just putting in the motions because that's what you're supposed to do with your shield buddy who didn't like it. Yeah. But I think, it's like because it exists in the gay community, I assume it exists in the straight community.
Of course. And probably larger is, I think, a safe bet. Probably much larger. But
the fact that there's so many people doing it in a society that encouraged it, I go, oh, there's a lot of us
in the middle
that in a different society might feel differently.
Sure. And that was the question that I was asking myself is if you removed, which you could not have in the past, and I don't want to throw out gender roles and say that they're useless or even that we know the extent of how they still are necessary in 2021. Like I wouldn't want to just entirely remove them because I'm not that progressive. I think tradition needs to be slowly displaced so that you don't throw out important stuff. I wonder what that how big that middle chunk is when given freedom, and not just freedom like, oh, it's legally accepted, but socially not frowned upon. Mm-hmm. And even what you could say is there's I imagine some subcultures in which it is socially encouraged. I don't know if that's TikTok at this point, but where being different from the sexual norm is a badge of honor.
I think for women on TikTok, it's definitely encouraged at this point.
Perhaps. I don't know enough to say. But yeah.
My guess would be...
Go ahead.
What about jail? Isn't that like a widely held belief in like American prison?
That what?
That like, I guess like the bigger guys will like go for these, I guess, softer looking guys.
Softer looking guys.
Well, yeah. I don't know how true that is. I don't know anyone who's... I mean, I actually know someone who went to prison, but he didn't have that experience. So I don't know if that's something that just comes from movies or not.
Well, I do think it seems that jailhouse rape occurs more than non-jailhouse rape.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's it might be more of a dominance move than a sexual move.
Sure, that's fair. I don't know. I'm really uneducated. I watched a section of one video that seemed to suggest that in female prisons there was couplings, like not just like girlfriends were far more common than in the world at large. And I could imagine that even if there were men that were not gay outside of prison, doing gay things inside of prison, you can't totally remove that cultural pressure that everyone grew up with that says that this is not right and you can't love this person and it's wrong. And so maybe it has to be expressed as a dominant.
Well, I just don't know. I mean, here's what I know that I don't know. So I don't know if that's true or a movie myth.
A lot of speculative.
No, but I'm saying I'm not going to speculate. I don't know if that's true or a movie myth.
Yeah.
And actually, if it is true that there's more sodomy, let's say, I actually don't know if that's a sexual expression due to lack of women or a dominance move to say if you do that to someone, that somehow helps you in your survival of the prison environment. I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah.
So my one friend that went to prison never had any of that experience. He just saw a guy get shanked.
So anyway, I'm reading the book. It's interesting. It's a bit repetitive on some of the parts. I do find some of the arguments a bit weak, but it definitely has opened my eyes. And what I mentioned to Ben, I was like, it is crazy that throughout my life, I would never consider doing gay things as like a sexual outlet. And I think the fact is not because I was born so straight or anything. Like, I know that the wall in my brain there was put in there as I grew up. It's like, this is just not something you do. And fortunately for me, it has not been a horrible struggle. Like, I feel lucky to wherever I am, whether it's on the side or the gray zone, it's at a level that is comfortable for me.
I had a friend who was bisexual, and I was like, what is that like? He goes, well, imagine, you walk into a party and you can be attracted to at most half the people at the party. I walk into a room and I go, I could be attracted to 100% of the people here.
Yeah.
That blew my mind. It's like, oh, whoa.
Hope that you guys enjoyed that clip. If you want to see more like this and have us do more podcasts, we are 100% funded by our generous patrons. And if you'd like to contribute, there's a link in the description, and we'll have one pop up on the screen right here so that we can do more podcasts where we have fun conversations and hopefully some deep ones like this. Either way, hope that you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.